day 23, I just had a huge fail. I had like the most wonderful conversation with my computer screen, but it wasn't recording. Brr, derp. Anyway, I guess I could just sort of sum it up in a way that's not 20 minutes like the actual talk that I did was. Yesterday I had said that I had been partially dishonest, and I think that in reflecting on it today, I realized that it was more of the same, the following things into absurdity. And I decided that I was going to rationalize it instead of rectify it. Because I didn't actually tell any lies. I assumed what somebody might think and went off of that. So it's like, if somebody tells you something and you reply with the truth or with the truth, but it's not the full truth, I don't think that it's leading them astray unless it's something that they genuinely need to know. You know, like if someone asks you, did you do this? Then it's a direct answer. You know, you say, yes, I did, or no, I didn't. But if someone says, can you make sure this doesn't happen again? Or can you make sure this person doesn't do something again? I think that saying, of course, absolutely, is a fine response. And you don't need to go into what they could be interpreting as who did what. You know, it's not my business what they're thinking. I got into a costume today. It was like a mascot for a yoga thing for International Women's Day at work. And I got to thinking about masks in general, the masks that we wear and the barriers that we have up in our day-to-day lives when we go out. You know, we do our makeup, we do our hair. For guys put on their suit, they make themselves look a certain way. Everybody has a look or a style. And when I was the bear today, I felt like I was free of this mask of professionalism that I usually have to adopt when I'm at my job. Being a mascot allowed me to channel my inner clown, which is a natural and raw part of myself. And it made me feel like I was being honest in a way. You know, and I was thinking about that. You know, some people, they sing in the shower, or they sing to themselves when they're cleaning, or they whistle, or things like that. But the minute that you actually start to look at yourself do these things, or think about how someone would see you doing these things, then it changes the way that you actually do them. I mean, the reason why the other video failed is because I had minimized the screen because I didn't want to watch myself do the thing, because I was like, when I watch myself, I end up like trying to fix my hair and stuff, and then I end up touching myself so many times that I start to wonder, like, what is it? Am I worried about what people are thinking about how I look? Because I don't actually care, but I don't care how people see me. I care how I see myself. So I got to thinking about masks and the different forms of them that we wear. And I was thinking back to 2012 when I took an acting class. It was one of my electives in my undergrad. And I remember it so vividly. It was one of the, I think it was pretty much past the halfway point. And we had to do the Meisner Technique. Some of you might recognize it from films like Good Will Hunting, or even there was an episode of Sex and the City. It's basically a character is making an observation or saying a phrase over and over again. You know, the Robin Williams to Matt Damon, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. I know. It's not your fault. I know. Or Carrie Bradshaw to Aiden, you know, you have to forgive me. You have to forgive me. You have to forgive me. And the point of the Meisner technique is through repetition, you really start to internalize the emotion behind the words that you're saying. Because so many times we say words and they're just hollow, they're empty, and they have no real meaning. They're just things that we say. But when we repeat something and we're really trying to internalize it, it makes us really engage with what we're saying. So in the technique, it was two of us, myself and another girl in the class. And our job was to make observations, and their job was to, like, my job was to make an observation. Her job was to repeat back that observation, and vice versa. She would say something, and then I would say, absolutely, or like, she'd say, you're moving your arms, and I would say, I'm moving my arms. You're moving your arms. I'm moving my arms. And then I said something, and it didn't happen naturally. The teacher helped us in this part. He was just like, well, she just said that she's nervous, so say she's nervous. And I was like, you're nervous. And she repeated back to me, I'm nervous. You're nervous. I'm nervous. And as we were repeating them, she started to cry. And we can all sort of emote with, like, we can empathize with that feeling of being nervous, like the butterflies in the stomach and that feeling of uneasiness. And she was nervous because we were in front of the entire class and we were just standing across from each other in a room. You're nervous. I'm nervous. She was crying. And then it was, you're crying. And she said, I'm crying. You're crying. I'm crying. And it went on. And then the crying got so much that, like, some of the class started to cry with her. And I was like, I felt really bad. And I was just like, I said, you're beautiful. And she said, I'm beautiful. And she started to, like, smile and cry at the same time. And as we repeated, you're beautiful, I'm beautiful, I started to cry. And I was choking on my words. I was just like, you're beautiful. You're beautiful. And when I said it initially, it was because I didn't want her to feel bad. I was like, you're beautiful. And as I said the words, and I realized that I was really connecting with her in that moment, and I was being honest with her, and it was the truth in that moment. I was like, you are beautiful. And I started to cry because I had never in my life felt that connected to another human being. And it's not like we're good friends now or anything. It was in that moment actually being conscious of my own words and really meaning them. It drove me to tears. And, just kept saying, you're beautiful, I'm beautiful. And we hugged it out at the end of it. And to this day, and it's been 6 years, I have not had an experience of raw emotion like that. I haven't had one since. And I remember it so well because it was like a breakthrough moment for me. It was like I was weeping for every single bad thing that had ever happened to me in that moment, because I felt her pain. And I know it sounds, it sounds so like hippie bullshit, whatever. I know how it sounds, but the idea of really living in your words or really living in your actions and taking to heart everything that you do and doing it in an honest way is something that's so far gone in how we interact with each other that it almost makes me want to cry thinking of that moment now. And maybe I'm an emotional person, but I think that we're all emotional beings in some way. But that moment and the entire class was crying too, and we were the only two people to, I think, really channel the exercise. And it just makes me think about how sad it is that so many of us have to resort to online spaces in order to just show a fraction of our raw selves, because we're never completely honest with anyone we meet. It's not smart to be completely trusting and honest and raw with everyone we meet. It puts us in a vulnerable state, and it can be interpreted as weakness. And we all know what happens to weak people, or people that are perceived as weak in this world. We're taken advantage of, or we hunch, like we have to present ourselves. We have to put on our mask of that proud lobster, shoulders back, chest out. We have to do that in our day-to-day life. And it's just a part of survival. But I remember getting into a conversation on Twitter with a couple of people about love in general, like the meaning of love. And I had said that I don't really understand it because I've never actually been in love. But I think I understand raw emotion. And I can summarize what I think love is in an abstract way, which is two individuals sharing their raw, true selves with one another. And I mean, like, it makes a case for marriage in a lot of ways, because we do feel an attraction to the way people present themselves, but we fall in love with who they are and what's underneath the mask. So, I guess we're all sort of going through life wearing these costumes, and maybe some of them can facilitate the expression of ourselves, but I think more often than not, the masks get in the way of who we are. And they don't have to be physical ones. They can be green hair, or a coiffed hair, or tattoos, or things that we try to externalize our internal selves with. And I'm not sure that it just makes me so sad that one experience 6 years ago is one of the only times, apart from going to comedy shows, where I really felt connected with another human being on a real and raw level. And that's why I feel like I'm such a supporter of Owen Benjamin, of any comedian that's willing to take a chance and to say things just to provide that way of connecting. Because you go to a comedy show, and when we're all sitting there in the audience and everyone's laughing together, or not laughing together, or whatever, we're all a part of that moment. And if someone's job is to bring us together through a raw, like, outward emotion of something like laughter, I think that they should be commended, not like berated. And I don't agree with everything that Owen says. Of course not. You can't agree with everything that anyone says. but I can at least appreciate that he's being vulnerable in a way that not a lot of people are. And I can appreciate that he has taken off his mask and is showing his true self to everyone in such a brave way. I mean, I'm not going to go on a whole rant here about other people. I'm just really thinking about masks and truth and how difficult it is to be ourselves when there's so many walls. It's like just the minute that you break down one wall with someone, there's like at least a dozen more that you have to break through in order to get to the real core of who a person is. And sometimes it's repetition. You know, when we say our prayers, it might seem like words at the start. And it has been with me. But when you start to really internalize what you're saying and really start to believe what you're saying, it's like a moment of clarity, because when you're engaged with the words that you're using, you're channeling a part of yourself that so many people have lost. You know, it's not a chant of protesters. It's words that have stood the test of time, words that have lasted longer than buildings, that have lasted longer than castles, dynasties. You know, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And there's so many ways to interpret that. But when you find a way to interpret it that's true to you, and you start, and I mean, like, true to the words themselves, obviously those words have meaning, but when you find a way to apply them to your life, and you find an example for each phrase that is close to you, that's when it becomes true. So the talk of your truth and my truth, there is no your truth and my truth. There is truth. There is truth, and there's ways that we can prove that truth through experience. So, you know, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. You know, he leadeth me to lie down in green pastures. You know, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. All these phrases, there's so much meaning behind them. And I mean, like, I know that not everybody here is Catholic, and not everybody watching is Catholic. And for the longest time, I've been an atheist, and it's just so, I mean, the religion through Meisner Technique, you know, you repeat something and repeat something and repeat something, and it doesn't feel true until it does. But it has to be true to begin with. And it's almost like sometimes your gut reaction is the right one, and then understanding sort of buttresses your gut reaction. I don't know if I'm making any sense. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I feel like there's a veil that has been lifted for me in a lot of ways, and that my immediate world, even though it's a small network of people, and I do communicate in large part through social media, but I'm starting to find a middle ground between what we could call the right and the left. And the middle ground is truth. I don't think that there's any way to go wrong if you speak the truth. But you need to do it in a loving way, in a compassionate way. And I think that compassion is one of those emotions that can only properly be relayed with discussion, with face-to-face talking. Because if I write something down, there's no emotion behind written words. There's emotion behind spoken words. So I feel like, I think that one of my friends said it today. The internet was a terrible idea. It's both great and terrible at the same time. Anyway, I guess that's day 23. And I kind of want everyone to have that experience that I had in 2012, because there's so many relationships now that I'm aware of. I'm pretty sure that there are more than that are built on this idea of presenting happiness as opposed to embodying happiness. And I know that I'm pretty certain that our purpose is not to be happy. I don't think that we're here to be happy. I do think that we can experience happiness, but I think happiness comes in the form of truth. If we can live a life that's true and honest, then we can find happiness in anything that we do. And even though we're going to struggle, because that's what life is, it's an eternal struggle. Not eternal even. It's a finite struggle. We have a limited amount of time within which to live. I think that the struggles that we face ultimately give way to moments of clarity and moments of happiness, moments where we can share our raw self with someone else. And I look forward to another moment like that. Until then, I think that comedy is probably the simplest way that we can connect. But just being true with someone, or finding truth in something. I'm not articulating this right. I did it better in the version before this. Anyway, day 23. I'm out. Have a good one.